A room, absolute silence, and then a single, quiet, mechanical click. Then another. A woman is typing a top-secret diplomatic cable in the heart of the American embassy in Moscow. The room is swept for bugs every single day, guards posted outside, state-of-the-art encryption on every line. The building has been inspected hundreds of times by the best counterintelligence specialists in the world. She is alone, she is safe, she is certain of it, and every single letter she types is being read in real time by the KGB from a listening post a mile away, not through a microphone hidden in the wall, not through a satellite intercepting her transmissions, through her typewriter, the machine she types on every day, the machine that has been in that room for years, the machine that was swept and cleared and certified safe dozens of times. It has been sending her keystrokes to Soviet intelligence before she even hits the encryption key, before the code, before the classification, before anyone else in the building knows what she wrote. This has been happening for 8 years. This is not a story about a spy who got caught. This is not a story about a double agent or a defector or a mole. This is a story about a machine, a piece of hardware so brilliantly compromised that the most sophisticated counterintelligence apparatus in the world walked past it every single day for nearly a decade and saw nothing but a typewriter. This is Operation GUNMAN, and it is the most terrifying piece of engineering in the history of espionage. By the late 1970s, the CIA had a problem it couldn't explain. Intelligence was leaking out of Moscow. Not slowly, not occasionally. Fast, surgically fast. Operational cables sent from the embassy were being acted on by the KGB before American field officers could execute them. Assets in the Soviet Union were being burned at a rate that didn't match any known penetration. Soviet counterintelligence was moving with a precision that looked less like guesswork and more like they were reading the same mail. So the CIA did the obvious thing. They swept the building. Teams of counterintelligence specialists went through the Moscow embassy room by room. Walls, ceilings, floors, furniture, light fixtures, telephone handsets, electrical outlets, every surface, every cavity, every conduit. They found nothing. They swept again. Still nothing. They pulled baseboards. They opened wall cavities. They inspected every cable run in the building. They brought in more sophisticated equipment. They redesigned the sweep protocols. Nothing. 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 And that is the specific moment when an investigation stops being about technology and starts being about people. Because if there is no device, then the information has to be leaving the building through a human being. So they turned inward. Every American officer assigned to the Moscow embassy became a suspect. Personnel files were examined, bank records reviewed, personal relationships mapped, travel histories cross-referenced. The specific psychological weight of a counterintelligence investigation, where your colleagues start looking at you differently, where every casual conversation feels like it's being analyzed, where the most experienced officers begin second-guessing their own motives, fell on the entire embassy staff. Careers were damaged, friendships destroyed. People who had served loyally for years were quietly reassigned, their reputations trailing question marks they could never fully shake. And the entire time, the source of the leak was sitting on a desk in the typing room, getting swept every week, certified clean every single time. Here is the specific detail that makes this so devastating. Every sweep methodology the Americans used was built on the same fundamental assumption. If something is transmitting, we can detect it. An active bug sends a radio signal. That signal has a frequency. That frequency can be found by a scanner if you know what you're looking for. The entire science of counterintelligence sweeping was built on this principle. The KGB's device wasn't transmitting anything. Not when the sweepers were in the room. Not when the security teams walked past it. Not during any of the hundreds of inspections it survived over 8 years. It woke up only when the KGB specifically told it to. Pulsed its stored data in a burst so short no standard sweep could catch it, and went silent again. The Americans were looking for a voice. The machine wasn't speaking. To understand how this worked, you have to understand the machine. In 1961, IBM released a typewriter that changed office work forever, the Selectric. Instead of individual metal arms swinging up to strike the page, the design every typewriter had used for 80 years, the Selectric used a single, interchangeable typing element. A small metal sphere, about the size of a golf ball, with every letter, number, and symbol raised on its surface. Press a key, and that sphere rotates and tilts at high speed to bring the correct character into position, strikes the page, and snaps back. Fast enough to keep up with any typist alive. It was a mechanical miracle. And Soviet engineers looked at it and saw something nobody at IBM had considered. Every character has a unique movement. The specific combination of rotation and tilt required to bring the letter A into position is different from B, different from 7, different from a comma. Every single character on that sphere requires its own precise physical motion, which means if you can measure the motion, you can read the letter. You don't need the paper. You don't need the ribbon. You don't need to be in the room. You just need to know exactly how the ball moved. Here is what they built. Inside the Selectric is a solid aluminum bar. Structural support. A component that has to be there. A part so mundane that no inspector on Earth would give it a second look. The KGB replaced it with a bar that looked identical and was hollow. Inside that cavity, a miniaturized circuit board and 6 magnetometers. Then they embedded tiny magnets into the mechanism that positions the typing element. Every time the sphere moved, those magnets moved with it, and the 6 magnetometers detected the exact magnetic signature of that movement. 6 sensors. 1 unique reading per character. The circuit board decoded it in real time. And the power supply? The antenna? They didn't add any. They repurposed the machine's own springs and screws, existing components, unmodified in appearance, to carry current to the hidden circuit and to broadcast the stored data. Nothing was added that could be seen. Nothing was removed that could be missed. From the outside, it was a typewriter. From the inside, it was the most elegant plain text collection device ever built. And it sat there, silent, storing every keystroke, waiting to be asked. February 1984. President Reagan approved a classified NSA operation. Not to catch a spy, not to roll up a network, not to arrest anyone, to replace a typewriter. All of them, actually. The NSA had received intelligence suggesting that something was wrong with the equipment inside the Moscow embassy. Not specific enough to say what, not detailed enough to say where, but enough to authorize one of the strangest operations in the agency's history. Every single piece of electrical and communications equipment in the U.S. Embassy in Moscow and the consulate in Leningrad would be removed, secretly, and replaced with new equipment shipped in from the United States, 11 tons of hardware. Teletypes, encryption units, computers, printers, copiers, safes, locks, and 250 typewriters. The replacements were X-rayed, disassembled, reassembled, and sealed with anti-tamper tape at Fort Meade before shipping. Armed guards escorted them through Dover Air Force Base, through Frankfurt, and into Moscow in tamper-proof bags that were deliberately unavailable in the Soviet Union. The swap had to be done without alerting the Soviets, and without telling the embassy staff the real reason it was happening. It took 5 months. Every item that came back from Moscow was stacked at Fort Meade and inspected. Visual examination first, then X-ray, component by component, machine by machine. The crypto gear came back clean. The safes came back clean. The communication systems came back clean. Weeks passed, then months. The team began to wonder whether the original intelligence had simply been wrong. Then, on July 23, 1984, 11 months after the tip that started the whole operation, a technician was X-raying IBM Selectric typewriters, and he noticed something in the on/off switch, a small coil of wire. That coil had no business being there. They opened the machine. The aluminum support bar was hollow. Inside it, a circuit board and 6 magnetometers, repurposed screws acting as antennas, magnets embedded in the type element carrier, everything the Soviets had built, sitting there, exactly as designed, still functional. They kept searching the pile. They found 16 bugged typewriters, placed in the most sensitive offices of 2 American diplomatic facilities, handling CIA communications, State Department cables, National Security Council traffic for 8 years. And then the NSA tried to calculate the damage. They couldn't. After Gunman, nothing was the same. The NSA's role expanded overnight. They became the agency responsible for evaluating every piece of equipment in every American diplomatic facility on Earth, not inspecting it once, continuously, permanently. New protocols were written, new inspection methods developed, and an entirely new category of threat was formally recognized for the first time: the hardware implant. A device that doesn't listen to your voice, doesn't tap your line, and doesn't transmit until it's told to. The IBM Selectric was pulled from classified use permanently. But the deepest damage wasn't procedural. It was psychological. Because the intelligence community had to accept something it had spent decades avoiding. The enemy doesn't have to break your encryption. They just have to read what you type before you encrypt it. The NSA director admitted it publicly 2 years later that the Americans had gotten comfortable assuming they were technically ahead of the Soviets, and that recent years had taught them a great deal of respect. Think about what those Soviet engineers actually did. They never broke an American cipher. They never recruited an American officer. They never turned a single asset. They built a machine inside a machine, made of parts that were supposed to be there, powered by screws, silent until spoken to. And they read 8 years of American secrets while the best counterintelligence teams in the world walked past it every day and saw a typewriter. They didn't defeat American security. They stepped around it. In 1976, the Americans believed they were safe because they had checked the room. Nobody thought to check the machine. So, have you ever wondered whether the device you're typing on right now is listening to you? Drop your most paranoid thought in the comments. I read every single one. Hit subscribe. Stay paranoid. I'll see you in the next one.